All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a pretty wild 2,500-year trip through the history of philosophy. But don't worry, we're not just going to sit here memorizing names and dates. Instead, we're tracking one specific, incredible evolution, how human beings have defined our own minds. We're going to look at how we transformed from basically being passive observers of the universe into what we now call Homo Modellus, the modeling subject.
So it all kicks off with this really fundamental question. Are you just living in the world, or are you designing it? Really think about that for a second. Are you just accepting the reality that's handed to you, or are you actively extracting data, forming concepts, and literally generating entirely new realities? Well, as you'll see, the answer to that question has completely flipped over the last couple of millennia.
To trace this out, we've got a 5-step roadmap today. 1. The ancient discovery of reason. 2. The medieval surrender to a higher power. 3. The modern rebirth of the thinking subject. 4. The contemporary era of deconstruction. And finally, 5. Our ultimate destination, Homo Modellus.
We are making a massive historical leap here, charting this evolution of thought from 500 BC all the way to our current digital age. I know, it's a huge timeline, but the one single thread connecting the whole shebang is simply how humans figure out their place in the universe.
Okay, part 1. The awakening. This is the ancient era, where the subject discovers reason. Back in ancient Greece, early thinkers like Parmenides and Anaxagoras made this radical pivot. They stopped just looking at nature and realized, wait a minute, our minds, our actual reason, have the power to organize the chaos of reality. But even back then, people were worried. They thought, well, if the universe operates by strict physical laws, are we just biological robots? The philosopher Epicurus stepped in and said, absolutely not. He introduced this concept called klinemen, which is this tiny, unpredictable swerve in the atoms. You can think of it kind of like a micro glitch in the cosmic code. And because of this randomness, strict determinism totally breaks down, which means, yeah, we actually have free will. Now, obviously, we can't talk about ancient Greece without bringing up Plato, right? Plato is all about these eternal, perfect forms. For him, the perfect model of, say, a circle or of justice exists in some higher realm before reality, and we just kind of remember it. But if we fast forward to today, the Homo Modellus's view completely flips that upside down. We say, no, we don't discover perfect models in some mystical realm. We actively engineer and create them right here, out of our messy, day-to-day interactions with reality. Piece by piece, these ancient titans were literally building the foundation of the human mind. You've got Parmenides and Anaxagoras giving us reason and organization. Epicurus hands us choice. Socrates shows us how to reflect. Plato teaches us how to abstract. And then Aristotle brings us all the way back down to earth to actually test those ideas in reality.
But then, history throws a major curveball. The Roman Empire falls, the world completely changes, and this new massive question pops up. If truth requires reason, can we use that reason to understand the divine? Or does reason suddenly have to take a back seat to faith?
Which brings us to part 2, the surrender. The medieval era, moving the subject towards God. For roughly 1,000 years, the ultimate subject wasn't the human being anymore, it was God. But here's the fascinating part. By turning inward to find the divine, thinkers like Augustine accidentally laid the complete groundwork for modern psychology. We yielded our autonomy, sure, but we vastly deepened our self-awareness. It was a super delicate balancing act. Philosophers like Anselm and Thomas Aquinas didn't just throw reason in the trash. They believed faith was the foundation, for sure, but human reason was the vital tool required to understand it. So they were subtly expanding human independence right under the umbrella of theology.
Eventually, though, that subtle independence grew way too big for its medieval container. The Renaissance and the scientific revolution kick off, and they spark this radical and frankly dangerous question. Can humans reach truth entirely on their own, completely independent of any divine authority?
And the answer they came up with was a resounding yes. Welcome to part 3, the rebirth. The modern era and the birth of the thinking subject. This is the moment human reason declares absolute independence. We basically stop looking up at the heavens for all our answers, and we start looking directly at our own minds.
You know the phrase, I think, therefore I am. René Descartes stripped away literally everything. He doubted his senses, he doubted reality itself, but he realized the one thing he couldn't doubt was that he was thinking. With that single famous sentence, the thinking subject became the absolute ground zero of all knowledge.
Then along comes Immanuel Kant, who just blows the doors off how we understand reality with his concept of the noumenon, the thing in itself. Kant realized we never actually see reality unfiltered. Think of it like you're wearing these cognitive VR goggles that you can never ever take off. Our minds actively organize all that raw data through space, time, and cause and effect. So we don't just passively look at the world, our minds actively build our experience of it.
So, if we build our experience, can we change it? Friedrich Nietzsche certainly thought so. He argued that we create our own values by overcoming traditional morality. But Nietzsche saw this as a very individualistic, kind of lone wolf triumph. The Homo Modellus framework takes this a step further and says, actually no, we don't just create value in isolation. We create complex models through collaborative, deeply interconnected social interaction.
But hold on a second. This modern idea of the perfectly rational, independent, highly autonomous self, is it actually real? Are we truly independent thinkers, or are we just products heavily shaped by our society, our language, and our institutions?
That brings us to part 4, the shattering, the contemporary era of deconstruction and becoming. Jumping into the 20th century, thinkers like Michel Foucault completely deconstruct that modern ego. Foucault argued, hey, we aren't entirely free. Our identities are actually molded by societal power, institutions, and the very systems we live inside.
Philosopher Gilles Deleuze took this even further with this wild concept of the rhizome. Think of a massive root system in the ground, or even the modern internet. There's no single center, no absolute beginning, and no end. Deleuze argued that human identity isn't some fixed, solid thing. It's a rhizome. We are basically networks of experiences constantly forming new connections and adapting based on whatever we interact with.
But right here is where we hit the crucial pivot into our modern age. See, Deleuze focused on this continuous, often directionless state of becoming, just endless change. Homo Modellus absolutely agrees that we're always changing, but it adds one vital ingredient: purpose. Homo Modellus engages in intentional generation. So we aren't just changing randomly anymore, we're grabbing the steering wheel. We harness that network of connections with clear intention to design and build something highly specific.
And that brings us to part 5, Homo Modellus, the ultimate evolution, the creating subject. This is the climax of our 2,500-year journey. It's the grand synthesis of all those past eras. From ancient reason all the way to contemporary networks, we finally evolved into the creating subject.
This evolution leads us directly to a core operational loop. Honestly, it's what you do every single day, especially in the digital age. Step 1, you intend a goal. Step 2, you model the reality, which means abstracting all the messy data of the world into a structure that actually makes sense. And step 3, you generate the new world. Whether you're coding software, starting a business, or just organizing your life, you're no longer just observing, you are engineering entirely new realities. Homo Modellus takes the absolute best parts of history. We synthesize Parmenides' reason and Aristotle's reality. We collaborate across Deleuze's networks. Our identities aren't fixed. We're constantly updating our mental models as new data flows in. And most importantly, we transform that raw data into actionable reality. We aren't just Homo sapiens anymore, the thinking human. In an age of AI and massive complex systems, just thinking isn't enough. We are the modeling human.
So, look at how far we've come. We've gone from discovering reason, to surrendering to the divine, to declaring our independence, to deconstructing ourselves, to finally becoming intentional creators. You have literally 2,500 years of philosophical evolution running through your mind right now. You possess the power to abstract, to organize, and to generate. So, I'm going to leave you with this final vital question. What kind of reality will you model tomorrow?